He offered food to two hungry aliens, and what happened left him speechless. The planet was uncharted, a place few humans had ever walked. His assignment was simple on paper: resupply the remote outpost at the edge of the colony. But out here, nothing was ever simple. He scanned the horizon. Jagged rocks rose like broken teeth from the barren landscape. Dust swirled around them, kicked up by a weak wind. Beyond the rocks, a cluster of caves appeared, half hidden by shadows. Something about the way the light shifted across them made Ethan pause. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. Ethan shrugged off the unease. He was trained for danger, for uncertainty. Most of his colleagues spent their days in clean, safe stations, calculating supply chains and inventories. He, however, liked the frontier. He liked seeing what others never got to see. But there was something different about this place, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand straight. He hoisted the supply crate and started toward the caves. His boots crunched against the rocky soil, leaving temporary marks in the dust. As he approached, he saw movement, quick, delicate, almost too fast to catch. Ethan froze. At first he thought it was a trick of the light, the shadows shifting in the wind. But then he saw them clearly, two beings unlike anything he had ever encountered. They were slender, standing no taller than Ethan's waist, with limbs that bent in ways human limbs could not. Their skin shimmered faintly, translucent and slightly reflective, like moonlight on water. Large eyes, dark and luminous, watched him with curiosity and something else, fear perhaps. Their movements were cautious, almost timid, as if they weren't sure he was real. Ethan's heart pounded. The protocol was clear. Humans were not to make contact with unknown life forms without clearance, but he couldn't just leave them there. They looked hungry. Their ribs were faintly visible through their delicate skin, and their movements were slow, weak. He crouched down and set the crate on the ground, opening it. Inside were nutrient packs and rations meant for human colonists, but they would have to do. Carefully, he placed some of the food a short distance from the aliens and stepped back. The aliens paused. They tilted their heads, studying him, then slowly moved toward the food. They sniffed it, poked it with delicate fingers, and then began to eat. Ethan watched quietly, his breath catching in his throat. The simple act of watching them eat made him realize just how fragile life could be, even on a planet filled with strange and dangerous beauty. After a while, they stopped and looked up at him again. One of them made a soft sound, like a hum, and tilted its head slightly. Ethan didn't understand the meaning, but he felt the gratitude. He had almost turned to leave when movement behind him caught his eye. Dust swirled and a shadow passed across the rocks. Ethan tensed. He wasn't alone, but when he looked again, it was gone. Perhaps just a trick of the wind, he thought. Night was approaching faster than he had expected. The two aliens had disappeared into the caves, their small forms barely visible in the growing shadows. Ethan knew he should head back to camp, but something inside him urged him to stay a little longer. He sat down on a nearby rock and watched the entrance to the cave. Hours passed, and the stars began to appear in the sky, bright and sharp against the dark. The silence was broken only by the faint hum of wind through the rocks. Then, just as he was about to stand and leave, he noticed a faint glow coming from the cave. The aliens were arranging small stones around the entrance. The stones pulsed softly, illuminating strange patterns in the dust. Ethan's curiosity burned. He wanted to approach, but he also knew he had to be careful. Any sudden movement could frighten them. He decided to stay hidden and observe. The patterns changed slowly, shifting as the aliens moved the stones. It was as if they were communicating something, though he had no idea what. He felt a strange connection to them, an unspoken bond formed simply because he had offered food. Ethan thought about the protocols he had trained to follow. Non-contact rules existed for a reason. Humans had made mistakes before, thinking they were helping, only to bring disaster. But he couldn't ignore the feeling in his chest, the undeniable pull to help these beings survive. The night deepened, and the wind grew colder. Ethan's stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten either. He reached for a nutrient pack and broke it open, eating silently while keeping his eyes on the cave. Then he heard it, a soft, melodic sound almost like music. It wasn't coming from his equipment. It was the aliens. The two small figures had started making a rhythm, moving their bodies in a coordinated way, almost like a dance. The stones around them glowed in response, brightening and dimming in time with the sounds. Ethan's breath caught. He had seen many strange things in the galaxy, but this was something entirely new. There was intelligence here, and it was beautiful. The aliens weren't just surviving, they were expressing themselves, sharing something of who they were. He reached out almost instinctively but stopped himself. They had to trust him. Any sudden gesture might frighten them. So he stayed still, letting the scene unfold before him. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. The dance ended and the aliens retreated deeper into the cave. Ethan remained on the rock, thinking about what he had just witnessed. His mind raced. He needed to document this to report it to the colony, but he also knew that if word got out too quickly, the aliens might be taken from their home. Finally, exhaustion took over. Ethan packed up his things quietly and began the trek back to his temporary shelter. He glanced over his shoulder at the cave one last time. The glow had faded, but he could still see the faint outlines of the stones arranged in patterns. Sleep came quickly, though his dreams were filled with glowing lights and melodic sounds. He dreamed of the two aliens, not as strange creatures, but as beings with thoughts, feelings, and a life just as precious as his own. The next morning he returned to the cave with more food, hoping to continue the silent exchange. But the aliens were gone. The cave was empty, the stones scattered. Ethan's heart sank. Had he scared them away? Had he made a mistake by approaching? Then he saw something that made him freeze. On a flat stone near the entrance, there was a small symbol etched in the rock. It glowed faintly in the morning light, almost as if it had absorbed some of the glow from the night before. Ethan knelt, tracing it with his finger. It was intricate, unlike anything he had seen before, a pattern of lines and shapes that seemed almost alive. He understood in a way he couldn't explain that this was a message, a thank you perhaps, or a promise. He didn't know. But he felt it in his chest, a connection, fragile but real, between himself and the two beings who had shared a moment of trust with him. Ethan realized that helping them had changed him. He had come here to deliver supplies, to follow orders, to do his job. But now he felt something more. He felt responsibility, not just for the colony, but for the life of these two small, fragile beings. He spent the rest of the day studying the patterns in the stone, sketching them in his notebook, trying to decipher meaning. There was no rush. The aliens would return when they felt safe. He would be ready. As the sun set again over the jagged horizon, Ethan felt a sense of anticipation. Something was about to happen, something that would challenge everything he thought he knew about life, intelligence, and the universe. He didn't know what it would be, but he knew one thing. Offering food to those two hungry aliens had set events in motion that would change his life forever. And somewhere in the dark caves of Kalis, two small creatures watched, and perhaps they were planning their next move. Ethan settled in for the night, his notebook open beside him, sketches of the glowing stones and the symbols scattered across the page. Sleep was elusive, but he didn't mind. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to learn, ready to understand, and ready to offer help again. Because sometimes, the smallest act of kindness could open a door to wonders beyond imagination. The morning sun spilled over the horizon in soft streaks of pink and gold. Ethan awoke with the faint memory of the glowing symbols from the cave etched in his mind. He had slept fitfully, dreams filled with shifting lights and delicate figures dancing in rhythm with strange sounds. He quickly packed his supplies, making sure to bring extra food, and started back toward the cave. Each step was cautious. He didn't want to frighten the aliens or disturb their environment. The wind whispered across the rocky plains, carrying the faint scent of minerals and dust. Despite the desolation, there was a strange beauty here, a beauty Ethan had never seen on any other planet. As he approached the cave entrance, he paused. The glow from the previous night's patterns was faint but still visible on the rocks. His heart thumped with anticipation. He set down the crate of food, placing the packs carefully in a line leading toward the cave. Then he stepped back, letting the aliens decide whether to approach. At first, there was nothing. The silence pressed in on him, heavy and tense. Then from the shadows inside the cave, he saw movement. The two aliens emerged slowly, their eyes wide and cautious. They were thinner than yesterday, their movements weak and hesitant. Ethan felt a pang of worry. Had they gone hungry overnight? He knelt on the ground, lowering himself to their level, and spoke softly. "I brought more food. You don't have to be afraid." The aliens tilted their heads in unison, a faint hum escaping their throats. Ethan didn't understand the sound, but it seemed friendly, curious. He took a small pack and opened it, letting the scent waft toward them. Slowly they approached, sniffing the food, touching it with delicate fingers. One of them reached out, touching his hand lightly, and Ethan froze. Their touch was gentle, almost tentative, as if testing whether he was real. For several minutes neither moved, and then the aliens began to eat. Ethan watched in silence, marveling at their grace. There was no haste, no desperation, just the careful, deliberate act of consuming what was necessary to survive. He realized that these creatures were intelligent, careful with everything they did, and capable of patience beyond anything he had seen in humans or animals. Once they had eaten, they retreated a few steps, standing side by side. One of them made the same melodic hum from the night before. This time, Ethan responded instinctively, humming back. The sound was rough and human, nothing like the delicate tones of the aliens, but he hoped they understood the gesture. Their eyes widened slightly, and they moved closer. It was not speech, but it was communication. Slowly, Ethan began to understand that their language was not words, but patterns of sound, light, and movement. They could express feelings, curiosity, and perhaps even ideas, without ever speaking a single word. Ethan spent the next few hours experimenting. He drew simple shapes in the dust, a circle, a line, a triangle, and waited. The aliens watched intently, tilting their heads, touching the marks, and then drawing their own patterns with tiny stones. Each arrangement glowed faintly in response to their presence, pulsing as if alive. By mid-afternoon, Ethan realized he had learned the first rule: patience. He could not rush the aliens. He could not force them to understand him. Instead, he needed to wait, to observe, and to respond gently. Every movement mattered. Every sound mattered. As he was sketching a simple square, he noticed one of the aliens pointing toward a cluster of plants nearby. The second alien joined in, creating a small, circular pattern with stones around the plants. Ethan's curiosity sparked. He walked closer, crouching to examine what they had indicated. The plants were edible, a local species that could supplement the rations he had brought. Ethan smiled. The aliens were teaching him something. They were not just survivors, they were guides in their own world. He carefully picked a few leaves, placing them in a small container, and offered them back to the aliens. They accepted, seemingly delighted, and Ethan realized that this exchange, of knowledge, of sustenance, was forming a bond between them. The human colony's rules flashed in his mind, a warning about contact with alien species. He knew he could get in trouble if anyone found out, but the thought of leaving these creatures hungry or afraid was unbearable. His duty had shifted. It was no longer just about resupplying the outpost. It was about protecting and understanding these beings, no matter the risk. As the day progressed, Ethan noticed something remarkable. The aliens began to mimic his actions, copying the way he drew patterns in the dust, the way he moved his hands, even the rhythm of his hums. And in return, he started copying them, replicating the delicate stone arrangements, the gentle tilts of their heads, and the soft melodic hums they made. It was a silent conversation, evolving slowly, beautifully, and completely beyond words. By late afternoon, the sky had turned a deep shade of orange, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. Ethan paused, wiping sweat from his brow. He felt a deep connection to these creatures, a sense of purpose he had never felt before. Then he noticed movement beyond the rocks, a patrol from the colony scanning the area. His heart sank. If they discovered him here, he could face disciplinary action, perhaps even be recalled immediately. Worse, the aliens could be taken from their home. He knew he had to act carefully. The aliens seemed to sense the approaching humans. They glanced toward the patrol, their eyes wide and alert. Ethan motioned for them to hide, and to his amazement, they responded. Using small rocks and plants, they created a camouflage that blended perfectly with the cave entrance. It was subtle but effective, and Ethan realized just how intelligent they truly were. He crouched beside them, holding his hand out in reassurance. "It's okay. I'll keep you safe." The patrol passed without noticing anything unusual. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The aliens peeked from their hiding spots, curious but cautious. He smiled at them, feeling a mixture of pride and awe. These beings were not just survivors. They were thinkers, planners, and capable of understanding danger in ways that rivaled his own instincts. That evening, Ethan tried something new. He arranged a line of food packs in a circle and sat in the center. The aliens hesitated at first, then cautiously approached. They sniffed, touched, and finally accepted the food. Ethan hummed again, and this time the aliens responded with a series of complex hums, a melody that seemed almost like laughter. Ethan felt his chest tighten. He had never imagined that such simple acts, offering food, observing, mimicking, could create such a profound connection. It was more than communication, it was understanding. And in that moment, he realized that the barrier between species was not as insurmountable as humans often believed. Empathy, patience, and curiosity could bridge worlds. As night fell, the aliens performed another dance with the glowing stones. This time, Ethan joined in, moving his hands in rhythm with their patterns, matching the gentle pulses of light. It was awkward at first, but slowly he began to feel the rhythm, the connection, the shared understanding of life itself. Hours passed like minutes. When the dance ended, the aliens retreated into the cave, leaving Ethan alone with the glowing stones. He sat quietly, absorbing everything he had learned. They were teaching him more than language or patterns. They were teaching him about trust, respect, and the quiet power of kindness. Ethan couldn't help but think about the colony, about the humans who believed that intelligence could only be measured in technology, in dominance, in power. He knew now that intelligence was also in subtlety, in observation, in the ability to live in harmony with the world around you. And humans, despite all their flaws, had something special too, the capacity for empathy, for reaching out, even when it was risky or inconvenient. He decided he would not report the aliens immediately. They were not threats, they were friends. And friendship, he realized, was more valuable than any rule or protocol. As he prepared to leave for the night, he noticed a faint glow on one of the stones near the cave entrance. It pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. Ethan knelt and traced it with his finger. A message, a gift. He didn't know, but he felt it was significant. He carefully packed it in a small container, intending to study it further. Sleep came slowly, but it was deep and dreamless. Ethan dreamed of glowing stones, melodic hums, and tiny hands reaching toward him in trust. When he awoke the next morning, he felt ready for whatever the aliens had in store. He understood now that this was not a one-time encounter. It was the beginning of a relationship, a dialogue between worlds that transcended words. Ethan packed his supplies and headed back to the cave. The aliens were waiting. Their eyes sparkled with curiosity and recognition. He smiled and held out his hand, not touching but offering reassurance. They approached slowly, and together they began another exchange of food, patterns, and sounds. Time seemed to stretch and bend in those moments. Hours passed, days might have passed, Ethan couldn't tell. All that mattered was the connection, the understanding, and the silent promise of mutual respect. By the end of the day, Ethan realized something profound. These aliens were not just creatures to be observed, they were teachers, guiding him to see the universe in a new way. And he, in turn, was their bridge to the human world, their protector and their friend. He knew that whatever came next, discovery, danger, or celebration, they would face it together. And in that thought he felt a quiet joy, the kind that came from knowing that he had found something rare and precious. A bond that transcended species, a connection built on empathy, patience, and the simple act of offering food to two hungry strangers. Ethan awoke to the pale light of Kalis filtering through the thin atmosphere. The wind carried the faint metallic scent of the planet, reminding him that life here was fragile and precious. The glowing stone artifact he had discovered yesterday still pulsed softly in his bag, as if alive, and he felt a quiet sense of anticipation. He had returned to the cave countless times now, learning, observing, and slowly understanding the two alien beings. Each visit brought new discoveries: the way they arranged stones, the subtle language of hums and gestures, the way they seemed to understand him without words. But today he felt something different in the air, a sense that the aliens had something important to show him. Carrying extra supplies, Ethan approached the cave cautiously. The two aliens were waiting near the entrance, their bodies tense but welcoming. One of them moved forward, holding a small plant in delicate fingers. The other carried tiny stones, arranging them in patterns that pulsed with faint light. Ethan crouched, keeping his hands visible, letting them know he came in peace. The aliens circled him, guiding him toward a deeper section of the cave he had never explored. The walls glowed faintly with natural bioluminescence, casting shadows that danced across the rocky surfaces. Ethan realized the aliens were leading him somewhere, a place of significance. As they reached the heart of the cave, Ethan's eyes widened. The chamber was vast, larger than any cave he had seen on Kalis. The floor was covered in glowing stones arranged in complex geometric patterns. In the center, a shallow pool reflected the light, creating an effect that made the chamber seem alive. Ethan stepped carefully, not wanting to disturb the intricate arrangement. One of the aliens touched the surface of the pool, and the water responded, glowing brighter and pulsing gently. Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest, as if the pool itself was communicating with him. The aliens began their melodic hums again, a sound that resonated through the cave, echoing in harmony with the stones and water. Ethan tried to hum back, unsure if it would be understood. To his surprise, the pool shimmered in response, and the glowing patterns on the stones shifted, forming shapes that seemed to represent memories, moments, and emotions. He realized slowly that the aliens were sharing something deeply personal with him, snapshots of their lives, their struggles, their history. Through the hums and gestures, he saw flashes of their civilization, delicate structures built from natural materials, communities thriving in harmony with the environment, and moments of joy and play. He also saw moments of danger, predators, harsh storms, and scarcity of food. His heart ached for them, and he understood that their gratitude for his kindness went far beyond a simple meal. One alien stepped closer, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. Ethan felt a wave of understanding, not in words, but in feelings. He sensed trust, a bond formed through shared experience. He responded by placing his hand lightly on the alien's arm, careful not to frighten them. The glow from the stones brightened, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Hours passed as they communicated in this extraordinary way. Ethan felt exhausted, yet exhilarated. He had never experienced anything like this, an exchange of thoughts, emotions, and memories across species. He realized that intelligence was not measured by technology or weapons, but by the ability to feel, to understand, and to connect. Suddenly, a distant rumble echoed through the cave. Ethan froze. The ground vibrated slightly beneath his feet. The aliens tensed, eyes wide, scanning the entrance. From the shadows, movement appeared, human patrols from the colony. Their scanners were sweeping the area, likely searching for signs of life or anomalies. Ethan's heart raced. If they discovered the aliens here, the creatures could be captured or harmed. He motioned for the aliens to stay hidden. They immediately responded, moving swiftly to obscure themselves behind natural rock formations. The pulsing stones dimmed slightly as if sensing danger. Ethan thought quickly. He grabbed a handful of loose stones and scattered them in the path leading to the chamber entrance, creating a subtle distraction. The patrol's scanners picked up the small movement, focusing on the false signal. Ethan breathed quietly, waiting. The humans passed without noticing the aliens, and once the patrols were gone, the stones pulsed again, returning to their normal brightness. The aliens moved closer, sensing his relief. Ethan smiled faintly. "It's okay. You're safe," he whispered, though he knew they couldn't hear him in the human sense. Their response was subtle, a soft hum that seemed to vibrate in the very air around him. As night fell on the planet, Ethan and the aliens continued their silent exchange. They taught him more about their world, how to identify edible plants, how to use the bioluminescent stones to mark safe paths, and how to recognize subtle signs of danger in the environment. Ethan, in turn, shared human knowledge, simple survival techniques, ways to ration food, and the concept of safety zones. By the next day, a sense of partnership had formed. Ethan realized that these beings were not just passive recipients of help. They were active participants in their survival. They were thinkers, strategists, and teachers in their own right. And together, they were building something extraordinary, a bridge between species, formed through patience, kindness, and mutual respect. The turning point came when the aliens led Ethan to a small, hidden chamber within the cave. Inside, he found a crystalline formation, unlike anything he had ever seen. It pulsed with light and emitted a faint, melodic tone. Ethan reached out cautiously, and the crystal responded to his touch, intensifying its glow. Suddenly, images and feelings surged through him. He saw the planet as the aliens saw it, a delicate balance of life, where every creature played a role. He felt their memories, their hopes, and their fears. He realized the crystal was a form of communication, a repository of knowledge that allowed them to share their understanding directly. Ethan sat back, overwhelmed. This was more than an artifact. It was a bridge of consciousness, connecting minds across species. He realized that humans, despite all their technology, had never experienced anything like this. And yet here he was, a simple supply officer, forming a bond that could change the way humans viewed life in the galaxy. As he absorbed the experience, a new understanding took root. The aliens were not just survivors. They were intelligent, capable, and deserving of respect. And humans, with their empathy and curiosity, could be allies rather than intruders. The key was patience, kindness, and the willingness to learn. Ethan spent the next few hours exploring the chamber, documenting what he could. He made sketches of the crystal patterns, recorded the sounds of the hums, and took notes on the glowing stone arrangements. Every detail mattered. Every observation was a step toward understanding, a step toward building trust. As dusk approached, Ethan knew he had to return to the outpost, but he did not leave empty-handed. The crystal pulsed gently in his pack, a promise that the aliens would continue to communicate with him. And he carried with him a new sense of purpose, to protect, to learn, and to ensure that this extraordinary bond remained unbroken. On the journey back, Ethan reflected on the events of the past days. He had come to Kalis simply to deliver supplies, following orders and protocols. Instead, he had discovered life unlike any other, life capable of intelligence, emotion, and trust. And he had learned that humanity's greatest strength was not in weapons or technology, but in empathy, the simple act of offering help to those in need. Back at the outpost, Ethan recorded his findings in detail. He wrote cautiously, knowing that official reports could lead to the aliens being taken or harmed. He documented their intelligence, their communication methods, and their ability to understand and interact with humans. He emphasized the importance of patience and respect, hoping that if the colony ever learned of the aliens, they would approach with care rather than fear. Days passed, and Ethan returned to the cave regularly. Each visit brought new discoveries. The aliens began to teach him more complex patterns, showing him ways to move through the terrain safely, and how to recognize subtle signs of predators and natural hazards. In return, Ethan shared stories of human ingenuity, of the stars and planets beyond Kalis, and of the possibilities of cooperation between species. One evening, as the twin suns set over the horizon, the aliens performed a ritual that left Ethan speechless. They arranged the glowing stones into a spiral around the crystal, creating a pattern that pulsed in time with their hums. Ethan joined in, moving his hands in rhythm with the patterns, and for a brief moment he felt as though he was part of their world, fully integrated into their understanding. The experience was transformative. Ethan realized that this connection went beyond survival. It was about learning, growing, and sharing knowledge across the boundaries of species. And he understood that humans had a unique role to play, not as conquerors or explorers in the traditional sense, but as partners, capable of building bridges and forming alliances based on respect and understanding. As night fell, Ethan sat quietly outside the cave, gazing at the stars. The aliens were inside, tending to the crystal and the stones. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for having been allowed into their world, for being trusted by beings so different yet so profoundly intelligent. He knew that challenges lay ahead. The colony might eventually discover the aliens, and not all humans would understand or appreciate the significance of this bond. But for now, Ethan focused on the present, the shared moments, the lessons learned, and the silent promise of cooperation and understanding that had begun with nothing more than a simple act of offering food. In that quiet moment, Ethan understood the true meaning of humanity, the ability to reach out, to connect, and to form bonds that transcended language, species, and the boundaries of the known universe. And he knew that whatever the future held, he had found something rare and extraordinary: friendship, trust, and the beginnings of an alliance that could change the galaxy forever. The crystal pulsed gently in the darkness, and Ethan smiled. The aliens had given him a gift greater than knowledge or technology. They had given him a glimpse of what was possible when empathy and courage guided human action. And somewhere deep inside the cave, the two small beings watched and hummed, as if acknowledging the bond they had formed. It was a bond that would grow stronger with each passing day, a bond that would teach both species the true meaning of understanding, respect, and connection. Ethan awoke to the faint golden light of Kalis, the twin suns just beginning to rise over the jagged horizon. The wind carried the familiar metallic tang of the planet, but today it felt different, almost tense. He had sensed it yesterday evening, a shift in the atmosphere, a subtle vibration in the rocks beneath his boots. Something was coming. He packed the supplies quickly and headed toward the cave. The two aliens were already waiting near the entrance, their translucent bodies shimmering softly in the morning light. They moved with a sense of purpose, their eyes fixed on Ethan as if urging him to hurry. As he approached, he noticed signs of disturbance along the rocky path: footprints, metallic scuffs, and faint energy traces that he recognized immediately. Human patrols were nearby, and they had come closer than ever before. Ethan's heart pounded. The aliens had never seen humans beyond him, and he knew that their trust could be broken if the wrong person discovered them. He crouched near the aliens, placing a hand gently on the nearest one to reassure them. "It's okay. I'll protect you," he whispered, though he knew they didn't understand the words exactly. The aliens hummed in response, a low vibration that echoed in the cave and seemed to convey both curiosity and anxiety. The aliens guided him deeper into the chamber, the heart of their cave. The glowing stones pulsed softly, lighting the way. Ethan followed carefully, carrying extra rations and recording details in his notebook as he went. He had learned to move without startling them, to observe without imposing, and to communicate through gestures, sound, and light. As they reached the central pool, the two aliens arranged the stones in intricate patterns, creating a complex spiral that glowed brilliantly. The crystal in the center pulsed in harmony with their hums, projecting images that Ethan could interpret as memories, warnings, and guidance. The aliens had something important to show him, something urgent. Suddenly, the vibrations returned, stronger this time. Ethan froze, sensing the patrols were near. He glanced at the aliens, who moved quickly to obscure themselves and the crystal behind natural rock formations. Their movements were swift, precise, and coordinated. It was clear that they had done this before, faced danger and survived. Ethan had an idea. He picked up loose stones and created a small distraction near the cave entrance, scattering them so the patrol scanners would focus on the wrong area. The plan worked. The patrol passed, scanning the decoy site while the aliens remained hidden. Ethan exhaled, relief flooding through him. The aliens peeked from their hiding spots, their hums soft and reassuring, and Ethan smiled. Once the patrols were gone, the aliens led him to a new part of the chamber he had never seen. The walls here were covered in glowing, crystalline structures that responded to touch and sound. When Ethan laid his hand on one, it pulsed with light and projected a series of images, a history of their species, their home, and their culture. He watched in awe as they shared knowledge he had never imagined possible. The aliens were not merely creatures. They were intelligent, artistic, and deeply spiritual. Their civilization had evolved in harmony with the planet, creating art, music, and technology that respected the environment. Ethan realized that their culture had flourished without conquest, without exploitation, a model of intelligence and survival that humans could learn from. As he absorbed the information, the aliens arranged a new pattern with the stones. This time, it was a message for him, a map leading to a safe area on the surface, a location where he could bring supplies and continue their collaboration without risk of discovery. Ethan traced the path carefully, committing it to memory. He understood that trust had grown between them. They were not only sharing knowledge but inviting him into their world. Ethan prepared to leave the cave to fetch more supplies, but as he stepped outside, he noticed movement on the horizon. This time it was not a small patrol, it was the colony's transport ship scanning for anomalies. Panic surged through him. If they landed here, the aliens could be discovered, captured, or worse. He had to act quickly. Thinking fast, Ethan grabbed loose stones and plants, arranging them in patterns to create visual interference for the ship's sensors. He also triggered small reflective crystals he had found earlier, scattering the sunlight in flashes that mimicked movement. The alien guidance, combined with his quick thinking, successfully confused the scanners. For now, the colony remained unaware of the aliens' presence. Ethan returned to the cave, heart racing but relieved. The aliens greeted him with soft hums, their glowing forms shimmering brightly. He felt a surge of pride. He had protected them, and in return they had shared their world with him. This was the moment he had been preparing for, a true exchange of trust and intelligence. Over the next few days, Ethan established a routine. He would bring supplies, observe, learn, and document. The aliens, in turn, taught him new ways to forage, new patterns of communication, and new perspectives on life. Every interaction deepened the bond between them, and Ethan began to understand the unique intelligence of Kalis. But he also knew that he could not remain isolated forever. The colony would eventually notice the anomalies, the glowing patterns, or his absences. He had to find a way to protect the aliens while still fulfilling his duties as a human officer. One evening, as the twin suns set, Ethan sat with the aliens near the glowing pool. They arranged the stones in a circular pattern, pulsing rhythmically. The crystal projected an image of the colony, showing human activity and technology. Ethan realized that the aliens were teaching him a new lesson: adaptation. To survive and thrive, both species needed to understand and respect each other's capabilities and limitations. Ethan began devising a plan. He would propose a research program under the guise of studying Kalis, geology, and environment, providing a reason for human presence without revealing the aliens immediately. This would give him time to prepare the aliens for safe interaction and establish trust. He knew it would be risky, but the alternative, leaving them vulnerable, was unacceptable. Over the following days, Ethan gathered data, mapped safe zones, and practiced communication techniques. The aliens responded eagerly, guiding him to hidden paths, warning him of unstable terrain, and demonstrating advanced problem-solving abilities. It became clear that their intelligence was comparable to humans in many ways, though expressed differently. They were artists, engineers, and strategists, all within a small, delicate frame. As the days passed, Ethan noticed something extraordinary. The aliens began to initiate interactions, approaching him with new patterns, new melodies, and even subtle gestures of play. It was as if they were teaching him not just about survival, but about joy, creativity, and curiosity. Ethan realized that this bond had become mutual. He was not merely a helper. He was a participant in their world, and they were participants in his. Then, one night, a sudden tremor shook the cave. Ethan braced himself, watching as the glowing stones vibrated in response. The aliens moved swiftly, guiding him to a protected alcove. Outside, the ground cracked, and a minor landslide shifted the cave entrance. Ethan felt a surge of fear, realizing how fragile this world could be. But the aliens remained calm, orchestrating their movements with precision. They led him to a secure area, using patterns in the stones and subtle cues to navigate. Ethan followed without hesitation, trusting their intelligence and instincts. When the tremor subsided, they returned to the pool, their forms glowing brightly. Ethan understood then that their species had survived countless dangers, not through force, but through wisdom, adaptability, and cooperation. The next morning, Ethan awoke with renewed determination. He had learned from these beings that true intelligence was measured not by power or domination, but by understanding, empathy, and the ability to protect one another. He had also learned that humanity, despite its flaws, had the capacity to build bridges, to act with courage, and to form alliances that transcended species. Over the following weeks, Ethan carefully implemented his plan. He submitted geological surveys, environmental data, and research proposals to the colony, all while ensuring that the aliens remained hidden and safe. Slowly, he created a framework for future collaboration, one that would protect the aliens while allowing humans to learn from them without causing harm. The aliens seemed to understand his intentions. They created more complex patterns, taught him new hums, and even began to mimic human gestures, showing signs of recognition and trust. It became clear that a genuine alliance was forming, built on mutual respect and shared understanding. One evening, as Ethan prepared to leave the cave, he noticed a small stone near the entrance. Etched into it was a symbol he had seen before, glowing softly. He picked it up and traced the pattern with his fingers. The aliens hummed, a sound full of warmth and gratitude. Ethan realized that they were acknowledging him, not just as a visitor but as a friend, a protector, and a partner. He smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey that had begun with a simple act of offering food had grown into something extraordinary, a bridge between worlds, a bond of trust and intelligence, and a new understanding of what it meant to be human. Ethan knew that challenges would continue. The colony might eventually discover the aliens, and humans might not always act with wisdom or empathy. But he also knew that he had shown what was possible when humans approached life with courage, kindness, and respect. The bond he had formed with the aliens was proof that humanity could rise to meet the challenges of the universe, not through dominance, but through understanding, cooperation, and empathy. As night fell on Kalis, the cave pulsed with light. The crystal reflected the stars above, and the aliens hummed softly, creating a rhythm that resonated through the chamber. Ethan joined in, matching their movements and sounds. For a moment there was perfect harmony, a shared understanding that transcended species, language, and the boundaries of the galaxy. In that quiet, glowing chamber, Ethan understood the full meaning of his journey. Humanity was not just explorers or conquerors. Humans were capable of empathy, courage, and connection. They could build bridges, protect life, and learn from worlds beyond their own. And somewhere in the depths of the cave, two small aliens shimmered softly, acknowledging the human who had dared to reach out, offer food, and open his heart. Together they had created something rare, precious, and eternal, a bond that would endure, a bridge between species, and a testament to the true strength of humanity. Ethan looked out at the horizon, the twin suns setting behind jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the rocky plains. He felt hope, pride, and a profound sense of purpose. He had learned that even the smallest acts of kindness, offering food, showing patience, extending trust, could lead to discoveries that changed everything. And as he turned to the cave one last time for the evening, he knew that tomorrow and the days after would bring new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to strengthen the bond he had formed. The universe was vast, full of mystery and wonder, and humanity had a place in it, not just to explore but to understand, to connect, and to rise. The aliens hummed softly, the crystal pulsed, and the stones glowed gently. Ethan sat quietly, listening, learning, and feeling more alive than he had ever felt before. He realized that this was the true meaning of discovery, not conquering worlds, but building connections, understanding life, and showing that even a single human, acting with empathy and courage, could make a difference that echoed across the stars. And with that thought, Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the presence of his two small friends beside him, knowing that together, they had opened a door to a future where humanity could truly shine. He offered food to two hungry aliens, and what happened left him speechless.